first time the applicant on 2A and his team are presenting before us. So I will read the first page of our, we got some background noise here. Okay, I think that's good. And just let them, I hope they listen to this and understand the purpose of the Design Review Subcommittee. The purpose of this subcommittee is to provide direction, insight, concerns, and options to the applicant on how the project can best comply with the city's design guidelines and/or city policies. The committee is not an approving body. They make recommendations to the Planning Commission and Zoning Administrator regarding a project's compliance with city design guidelines. Each of the subcommittee members, who are also planning commissioners here, will provide input and suggest recommendations to the applicant based upon written city design guidelines and/or policies. The subcommittee is not going to design the project for the applicant, nor will the members always agree on the best course of action. The applicant can then assess the input and incorporate any changes accordingly, with the understanding that the subcommittee is simply a recommending body. Decisions to approve, deny, or modify a project are made by the Planning Commission and city staff. The chair of the subcommittee will lead the discussions. Planning staff will be available to provide technical assistance as necessary. Time is limited. Consequently, the Design Review Subcommittee will focus on site and project design rather than on land use issues, which are the purview of the Planning Commission, City Council, and/or Zoning Administrator. So with that, the first order of business is approval of the minutes, and we only have two of the members who were at the previous meeting. Katie, Michael Blackwell was not in this meeting. I believe it was Jim Rulin who substituted for the previous for one of the items.
Commissioner Crandall. So assuming you're going to take roll, right? And then when you do, I'll let you know that I did review the discussion of the last meeting, and I will leave that up to you if you would like me to weigh in on the minutes. But otherwise, I would withdraw my my vote on the minutes.
That's probably the cleanest. That's what we've been instructed by city attorney in the past.
Okay.
Just easier. Okay. So Ken, do you have any changes or corrections other than the list of attendees?
No. You already mentioned the change, so I don't have any other changes. So with that, I will move to approve the meeting minutes of the 30% Clemente minutes of the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee, August 12, 2020.
I will second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes 201.
What?
Yes, go ahead.
With the revision to change the name.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
With revision to correct the attendance list. Very good. We have Katie, who is presenting the item 2A, site plan permit 2134, cultural heritage permit 2135, shoreline dental 1409 South El Camino Real. Katie, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I do have a presentation this afternoon, so I will pause just 1 minute while we get that up. Here it is. So the proposed project is a proposal for a new 2-story office building at 1409 South El Camino Real. Because it's a new commercial building, it requires a site plan permit and a cultural heritage permit due to the site's location and the architectural overlay. A discretionary sign permit is also required to review and approve a master sign program for the proposed building. However, the applicant has not yet submitted a master sign program, and it can be considered separately, but sign permits will not be granted until the Planning Commission can review and approves a master sign program for the building. Next slide. You can see the location highlighted on page 1 of the agenda packet. It is at the northwest corner of South El Camino Real and West Avenida Valencia, abutting exit 74 southbound ramp of the I-5 freeway. As such, this is a general plan designated gateway area. This portion of South El Camino Real within the architectural overlay requires Spanish colonial revival or other Spanish architecture. Next slide. The project includes demolition of the vacant Tommy's Restaurant building. The building was constructed in 1963 and could be a candidate as a historical structure due to the mid-century modern Googie-style architectural design. The applicant provided a historic building report prepared by Brian F. Smith and Associates, which concluded the building is not historically or architecturally significant under any state or City of San Clemente significance criteria for historic structures. The report was attachment 4 of your agenda packet. Staff received a written comment from Larry Culbertson of the Historical Society, which was forwarded to the DRSC members earlier this afternoon. In it, he expresses concern over the destruction of a potentially historically or architecturally significant structure. I can read his letter now if you like, Commissioner Crandall, or I can read it in later.
Let's hear it now.
Okay. It says, Katie and Design Review Subcommittee, I am concerned about the demolition of what could be a historically significant resource. Brian F. Smith and Associates did a superb job of explaining exactly why the building at 1409 South El Camino Real is an insignificant, architecturally unpedigreed, poorly constructed, ill-modified, photographically undocumented chunk of bulldozer fodder. But is there a chance that someone else might see it a different way? The Historical Society has been asking the city to update our survey of designated historic structures, which was last done in 2006. The recommendation of that study was to include mid-century architecture, which includes Googie. There is a good chance that if this building had been listed, the tax breaks made available to the owner would have resulted in rehabilitation to this classic 1963 Googie restaurant. Did our historic preservation consultant sign off on this project? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. Larry Culbertson. So, in response to Mr. Culbertson's concern, we will have the city's historical consultant peer review the historic building report provided by the applicant to ensure that they concur with the conclusions of the report. And we'll do that before we obviously bring it to the Planning Commission for a decision on this project. Next slide. The overall project area is 24,406 square feet, which includes an easement over a small portion of the property to the north for parking. As previously mentioned, the existing restaurant would be demolished to make way for the 5,927 square foot two-story office building. Let's see. The first floor suite would be for Shoreline Dental, and the smaller second floor suite for another office tenant. Next slide. As you can see on the site plan, which is in attachment 5, page 135 of your packet, or in the larger format plan sets provided to the DRSC members. The building is located along the El Camino Real street frontage and nearest to the intersection by the freeway off-ramp. The first floor, both along El Camino Real and along the building frontage to the parking lot, include a pedestrian arcade, creating an inviting street scene. Parking and trash enclosure areas are to the side of the building as required by the design guidelines. Next slide. The applicants have been working with the city on the building design to ensure it meets the city's requirements of high-quality architecture in gateways and employs a Spanish colonial revival design. The top elevation here is the primary elevation facing El Camino Real, and the bottom is facing the parking lot. On both of these elevations, you can see the stucco arcade that I previously mentioned. Next slide. Architectural details for the building include smooth white stucco, earth-toned roof tile, black divided light windows and doors, and wood trellis details. The tower element at the corner anchors the building and includes a tall arched window fitting for the location at the corner of a gateway. Next slide. Staff did have several recommendations to improve the building's consistency with design guidelines, which are listed on page 5 of the agenda packet. Of note, these include removing the glass railing at the second floor deck in favor of more traditional wrought iron or stucco, utilizing two-piece clay tile roof with booster tiles and random mortar packing, which is kind of our standard condition instead of the S-tile called for on the plans, and removing the cornice trim at the soffits of the tower element and the El Camino Real frontage. The applicant has expressed willingness to incorporate most of these suggestions, but did provide a response as to why certain design choices were made, such as the glass railing and the cornice trim. Their written response to our recommendations were forwarded to DRSC members by email earlier today. Staff did not receive any other comments on the project other than the applicant and the Historical Society. I'm happy to answer any questions you have of staff. Additionally, we have several members of the Shoreline team available to answer questions and further discuss the project. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Let's go ahead before we start any questions for you or anyone else at this point have the applicant have any words that they'd like to give to us. Either the applicant or the architectural firm.
Corey or either Mark, did you want to speak?
I don't know if Mark or Jared are going to have any comments, but I think Katie did a good job representing what we are trying to achieve with the project. And I know that they've been in contact with you and other members of the city staff just in terms of most of what the comments that you've made. I think that we will reflect those in the building, but I know there were 1 or 2 points that hopefully the committee will look at to see if there's any opportunities for those to still be passed. And then I don't know if there's a larger conversation. It looks like maybe the right people aren't here to have that about the easement and the use of the easement as well.
Okay, thank you, Corey. We will open it up for questions, and if the two commissioners here tonight with myself would agree, I'd really like to focus first on the historic aspect and the questions that Katie had. So we craft our questions accordingly. Katie, would you agree it would probably be a good idea for us to accept temporarily accept the historic findings for discussion, pending what the city finds from our historic consultant?
I think at this point that would be preferable. That way the applicant can receive the design review subcommittee's feedback on the design they've proposed, and that they will be carrying out, provided that the city's historic consultant agrees with the conclusions of their report. Okay,
either Jen or Mike, do you have a thing on taking that tack?
I do. I am not sure. I don't think Zen's mic is on, so I'll go ahead and jump in. Bart, yeah, thank you. I'll just be honest with you. I don't know enough about the Doogie style to comment on it. I remember a little from school, but I couldn't look at this and really weigh in with any value other than what Mr. Culbertson has offered into the record. Tends to be pretty pretty solid information. Obviously, that's in his wheelhouse, and he's been a great resource to us over the years. I would say that if we're really considering that component as a, Mr. Culberson's position was that we would consider the potential significance and potential regret later on should we go in a different direction, architecturally speaking. On that fact alone, I would say we should probably get some more education before we make such a big decision, push this thing forward. That's just my off-the-cuff response to that, and I think it's valid. Especially in our city, there's been so much loss over the years. I would like to know more about the style, some of the prominent features that are included in it. I did do a little research on it, but frankly, it just wasn't enough to be of value in this forum, nor would it be a planning commission. I just need more education on it. The current design, I think, is it approaches our intent as we reach for a palette of Spanish colonial theme along our streetscapes. I think it definitely gets there. There's definitely some discussion to be made still on some of the elements, as I'm sure we'll get into. And Bart, that's my response to your question. You're taking lead on this, but I do have other comments I'd like to hold.
Well, the main reason I took this tack is if we say no, it is a historic place, discussion over. So to continue this on and move it on, I think we need to just take the position that we aren't going to make the finding for historic significance at this point, pending review by a professional, and we take that tack at this time with that caveat. Commissioner Wu, do you have any comment?
Regarding the status of this building being a historical structure or not, my position is that we have to rely on this consultant.
Very good. Okay. Well, we will take that approach.
Mr. Crandall, may I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
Have any of the commission members read the historic report from Brian Smith?
From cover to cover.
Okay. And is that you're still going to, but you still will defer to your consultant at this point?
Most of the training that I've received with the city has either been for residential or large commercial when we go to conferences and all. This is kind of an in-betweener. And I am inclined to agree with the report, but I didn't want to have the anything hold up a review of your project.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, so let's, if you have any questions, let's start on site plan questions for Katie and the applicant. Then we'll do landscape, and then we'll do building questions. We'll separate them out so it doesn't get too confusing. Let's start with Jen. Do you have any comments on site plan?
Yes. Before asking the question, I do still want to ask Katie. If we get a chance to ask our GPA consultant to make a determination if the historical structures consultant's report is acceptable.
Yes, that's what we'll be doing in response to Larry's comment. We will consult with GPA and have them peer review the report.
Okay, thank you. On the site, simple question. The report talking about an easement. I'm looking at the frame map. I don't see it. Can you clarify that?
Sure. It's on the left-hand side if you're looking at the site plan. It's not shown. That's what staff is requesting, that they show the property line clearly. But we do have other documentation that shows it. So the next time you see this, it will be on the site plan. But it's just a small strip, maybe about 20 feet on the left-hand side of the property where those first 7 parking spaces are.
I see that, but it's marked as a parcel 2, and it's within that property. It means it's a part of the property, and is not an easement over the neighboring property. That's what the drawing says.
Right. They, this property, the subject property owners have an easement over the neighboring property for parking.
So are you saying the property line on the auto survey map is incorrect?
I don't know. Let me pull it up.
Chad is correct that the Alta survey is showing it as parcel 2 rather than the adjacent parcel with an easement on it.
Okay. Well, the title report shows it as an easement. So we will get that sorted out. And we've already discussed this with our city attorney's office a bit. So we'll have the details on that easement sorted out before this comes back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions on site, Jean? Or we can ask them again during discussion.
No, I don't have any other questions. Just want to make a comment, Katie. The drawing I received from the city is inconsistent. This one is 11 by 17. We always would like to have a drawing that's at scale. If it's not at full scale, we want it to be at half scale, so we can measure it, and also more legible. That's all.
Okay. Apologies, Commissioner.
Okay, Commissioner Blackwell, on site
Yes. Echoing Commissioner Wu's request, I did not receive a full set of drawings, something I could scale off of. So a little bit difficult. I wanted to get clarification on the height. We're talking a 32-foot maximum height. That's to the top of the tower structure from grade, existing grade. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I know there's no master sign permit in the works at the moment, but there is a significant element on the site that I think affects the overall aesthetic, line of sight, etc. And that's the Tommy sign, the freeway sign that sort of made it through our discussions previous regarding the sign ordinance and prohibiting freeway signs, etc. Has there been any discussion about removal of that sign?
Yes, there has. And even prior to this application, I would say code compliance brought it to the city planner's attention, and a letter had been sent to the property owner requesting that it be removed because the code requires that abandoned signs abandoned for 90 days or more be removed. So that would also include the sign on the front of the restaurant as well. I believe the applicant is aware of that, and they did mark the sign to be demolished on their plans. So that is planned to be removed.
Okay. And were there any renderings, line of sight renderings from the primary corridor, I-5? Looks like there's a 1 foot difference in elevation from the highest point of this proposed structure in the base of the freeway. It shows it about a foot difference. Did the applicant provide any line of sight renderings from the freeway looking west or southwest?
Not specifically. One of the renderings they provided, which is in the plan set, attachment 5, kind of would show that, but it's really, if you were looking back on it, which isn't super realistic. So no, they have not provided that yet.
Okay, and I would be looking for something that would include the the actual horizon and the ocean point of from a perspective from the freeway looking out, so we can get an idea. In the past, we've looked at that sort of information when we review projects, so we've considered any potential obstructions, and blockages of certain vistas, etc. So we definitely would like to see that. I would like to see that.
Okay, and that would be from the freeway if you were traveling south and looking out over the site.
Correct. And then
okay.
Across any private properties that are across the freeway within the city of San Clemente, there might be some relevant perspectives there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just for historical context on height and freeway view, the big discussion that was had was on a mixed-use project where they were jointly applying for their project, but also trying to establish the height limitations. Well, the height limitations have been established on this one and across the street, which is vacant. So, Katie, make sure that before you spend a whole lot of time on that, that can be taken into consideration. The freeway view.
Okay.
I do have one question, and it may not be answerable at this time. The corner where the off-ramp comes down to is not indicated that it's Caltrans or city's property. Do we know who owns that corner?
Yes, it's Caltrans.
And what ability does the city have to either have it maintained, have it landscaped? How can we help the applicant get that cleaned up to help the project out?
Yes, that is on our radar. I have that on my list of to-dos. I have the appropriate contacts at Caltrans. So I'll be contacting them, and I'll update the commission when this comes back for further consideration.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Katie as far as the building is concerned? I do want to stress that this is also a gateway, which is a little unique to our city, I believe. And did the applicant have the opportunity to visit the existing gateway structures in the city? And this might guest be for Jared Dudley, and view the quality and design of the other gateways, which are on pretty much every freeway exit now. Did someone from your firm have the opportunity to study those, Jared?
Yes, we did go up and down and focus on each of the existing freeway on-ramps, off-ramps, and we did see a few of those gateway projects. Most notably, not a gateway project, but down the way there's a large Ralph's shopping center that we're trying to tie back into with this design. So the idea was that we were going to take a Spanish colonial hacienda luxury feel and pull that back down to make that connection down the way.
Okay, I would suggest you work with Katie, because we had a whole shopping center that was done at the Estrella exit, which was gateway. Vista Hermosa, the new hotel on what is it, Palizada. We have all things with the Valero gas station.
Excuse me, Commissioner Crandall, this is Katie. I'm having a hard time understanding you. Commissioner Blackwell, if you could mute your mic, that would be really helpful. I thank you so much.
Okay, well, I'll start again. Just that the architectural firm should visit each of these designs, and Katie can tell you which ones we've done. There's the Starbucks at the Pico interchange. There's to be coming, possibly the In-N-Out, the gas station across the way from the post office. There's the Valero gas station, and your building will be compared to those, and those are extremely high quality and well done projects. So you will know what you are being evaluated against. Yes,
I very much welcome that list, Katie. we would like to definitely take a look at that before we finalize anything here with this design.
Very good. Thank
Sure.
you. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments specifically on building at this time? I see none.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Wu.
Katie, one of your recommendations is to have bullnosed corner. Are you talking about this bullnosed bead, but once it's finished, it's just around the corner?
Yes. It's somewhat of a standard requirement. There was a condition specifically on the Valero project. The same condition is also on the In-N-Out project, which you'll be considering next week at Planning Commission. So that would, just for rounded corners.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Instead of using a screed, they just roll the reinforcing mesh.
right. It's a bullnosed corner bead. The finish is round. Also, for the roof equipment, since we don't have a roof plan, I can only see it from the rendering. So it would be nice to have a roof plan next time. Well, at the planning commission level, if we move it to the planning commission.
Okay.
Okay. So we have building. We have. Okay. Do we have any questions on landscaping for the applicant and/or Katie? Commissioner
I
Wood.
have one. Katie, what is the typical interval of trees on El Camino Real? I know city typically asks for 25 feet, maybe. Yeah.
Sure. I didn't actually go out and measure what's existing there. It is called out specifically in the design guidelines, and I believe it's 30 feet, but I'd have to look that up for you to verify. Let me see if I had it in the report somewhere. Yeah, let me look that up for you, and I'll get back to you at this meeting.
Okay, you can jump in there. Okay, let's go ahead and close questions because I'm going to allow questions to be made to staff and the applicant during discussion, so we can have a good project. Are Jen and Michael open to that?
Sure.
Let's close then the presentation portion. Open it up to public comment. Katie, were there any other public comments besides Larry Culbertson's?
No, there were not.
Okay. We will close the public comment section and open up for discussion between commissioners, members of the Design Review Subcommittee. Let's start on site design. Any discussion on site design? Jen and Mike?
Yes, I don't really have a lot of comments. I only have a limited amount of comments overall. Regarding the view toward the ocean and a potential block of the building of the ocean view from the freeway, I don't worry about it because the top of the building is lower than the grade of the freeway. So imagine someone sitting in a car, he or she is about 4 feet or 5 feet of the surface. So I don't think it's a concern, but The report does mention the rooftop equipment possibly being visible from the freeway. And I want maybe we don't need to do a rendering, but do a cross-section type of thing, just a sightline analysis. I don't believe it's all visible because of the landscaping next to the freeway. Just want to make sure.
Okay. Michael, I think Jared, I think you're not muted, and we may be getting the feedback from your phone.
Mr. Crandall, I'll just go and jump in. Yeah, I think overall, the scaling to me looks good, at least in the renderings that we've been provided. I'm very interested in a line of sight study from vantage points north, higher in elevation, especially from the freeway and other land uses within the city of San Clemente, across from the freeway looking west and southwest. Some of the details, I appreciate some of the modernization of the style. Some of the details here are a bit of a departure for me personally. I'm looking at some of the cornice detail, and I'm wondering if that's scaled properly. And I'd love some feedback from the two architects on this board on that. The lighting, the external sconce lighting, I am not a big fan of it. I don't see the value from a Spanish colonial perspective, and if there's some support for that, I'd appreciate that too. Some other examples. That lighting looks a little more modern to me, not as fitting, just at least in the renderings, the details that have been provided. Some of the recessing on the windows, considering the scale of the structure, I'd like to see more recessing on some of the exposed windows, especially on the north side of the building as you come off the freeway, and the southeast side of the building as you come down onto El Camino Real. There's not enough screening. The window details that are there, I think some work needs to be done on those elevations still. Those would be highly visible as you come into the city. Being a gateway area, I think deserves a little more attention in that regard. I'd be interested in, and by the way, I was very happy to see Katie, the applicant, has agreed to do the address our request for that barrel tile and the concrete packing randomly. I think that's going to make a big difference. I did not see a landscape plan, Katie. If there was one, please direct me to it, but I did not see one in the packet that I received. I saw some.
Yes.
L-10, 1.0.
Yeah, it's attached. It's in attachment 5. So your 11 by 17s.
Attachment 5. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna pause then and take a minute to review that while the other commissioners comment.
Excellent.
But yeah, I'll just go ahead and step off.
And
we're going to concentrate.
Commissioner Crandall, if I can jump in and answer Commissioner Wu's question from earlier regarding the street trees. Yes. I do not know what the as-built or as-planted trees are spaced right now, and I know a few of them have been changed out, but the design guidelines call for Mexican fan palms, which is what's proposed, 30 feet on center.
Very good. Thank you very much, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my comments on the site plan are location of the building is fine. Coming down the on-ramp, you do get the view, or the off-ramp, you get the view for now. As soon as something's built across the street on that vacant property, that ocean view from the ramp is going to pretty much disappear because you're getting down on the same level as that vacant lot. But I have a concern on the 7 parking stalls at the easement side. We're going to have a 4-foot high retaining wall. I assume concrete block. They don't specify what it's made out of. That the parking spaces butt into, and there's no landscaping across there. And I'm assuming the adjacent property owner could, on top of that, build a 2-story building. So that's there could be a very stark wall on that end of the property. And I would like the architect's office to respond. Is there any way to make the 2 islands on the nose-in parking adjacent to the bioinfiltration bed, make those 4-foot wide, giving us at least a 24 or 30-inch wide planter at the base of that retaining wall to soften that up a little bit. Jared, do you have any comment on that?
Yes, we could look into that. I need to check back with the civil engineer on this project, because we had to absolutely stretch the biofiltration bed to the absolute extreme in order to meet the requirements of the on-site drainage for this project. But it's very possible that we could lose a spot out of the middle and pull that retaining away from that property line. Yes.
Yeah, just pull the parking stalls back just enough to get either vines or something with a little bit of height to it, just to soften that wall. That would be appreciated.
Absolutely.
Do you know, is it a concrete block wall?
Yes, it will be a concrete block wall.
Okay. One thing I struggled with... Go ahead.
It'll be rendered in the same finish as the building. It'll match. It won't be just a painted CMU or anything like that.
So it'll be color coded and CMU. I struggled reviewing kind of the whole package because I know there's time restraints and budget restraints on your part, so these aren't critical, but they're things that have happened. The site plan on A0.1 and in other locations don't match what's really going on. The building sits anywhere from 18 to 2 feet above the sidewalk. And we have ramps going down at both edges of the building along El Camino Real. So I don't know how you're going to handle that. We can't drain down to the sidewalk. So any landscape, there's going to have to be a curb or some way to contain the irrigation in that area. The inconsistencies I'll get to as we get into the building, but on the site plan, that was a concern. Have you had enough time to actually resolve those issues yet?
Yes, 100% of the drainage on site has already been calculated and accounted for. We retain 100% of the water on site, and that's already been worked out by the civil engineer. We also have, if you notice, we have a biofiltration sump pump location, which is going to be the catch-all, basically adjacent to where the accessible parking is. That's going to be a spot that ends up getting pumped to the biofiltration bed because of the amount of water that this site is required to retain. So yes, those numbers have been worked out.
And I just wanted to jump in, Commissioner, they did submit a preliminary WQMP, which has been reviewed by our consultant, and they didn't have additional comments after
and I'm more
review.
concerned about the aesthetic issue of it. If you go to sheet, let's say A3.2, yes, it's the color board page, but well, here, let's go to 3.3. all the renderings show that the sidewalk's level with the building, and in fact it's not. It's 2 feet below the building. So there's going to be, that landscape is sloping towards the sidewalk. And I don't know how they're going to handle that. Also on the rendering on 3.3 in the lower right, that whole edge of the building has a ramp and handrail going down it that we don't know what it is, which is a site issue. It's sloping, I think, at 7% maybe, something like that. That it seems like our site plan that we're looking at is somewhat incomplete as far as addressing all those small issues, and the renderings don't match the site plan. Another example, just so you know, if we're to bless this and say it's ready to be moved on, I'm uncomfortable if things aren't consistent throughout your presentation. Again, the planner on the first driveway apron, on the right side of the driveway apron going in, goes into the site, basically to the back of the first archway piemaster. But all the renderings show it going back as in, let's see, what here, on the same sheet 3.3, going a whole archway further. So there isn't as much landscaping as is shown on the renderings, so we're not getting a good picture of what is actually happening. In the upper right, again, it shows that the, this is on sheet 3.3, the landscaping passes the first archway completely, while it only goes to the first piemaster of that archway. Were you aware of that? Eric? I mean, I know you have a plan check.
Yeah. The final rendering was in flux towards the end here, and we needed to get something out to you for this project. So there are a few coordination issues that need to happen with the actual landscaping and the rendering. That being said, per the civil, we are able to get very close to street to the level of the front sidewalk, and if you look, we are partially subterranean in the back of the property. So the back of the property, yeah.
But I think the numbers were your finished floor is at 223.2. The sidewalk is at 220.45. So it's there's a decent slope there. Anyway,
yeah, we could try to dial that back in a little closer to accurate on the rendering.
Or give us the solution. Are you going to put a curb so people aren't accidentally stepping into your planter? You know, what is actually going to occur on the site?
No problem.
As far as site plan, do you know, are you going to try to keep that same fence along the east property line to the Caltrans corner?
Unfortunately, that entire fence and wall is Caltrans owned, so I don't know how much we can actually do.
The wall itself is actually owned by Caltrans. It says an existing fence 4 feet high.
Commissioner, this is Katie. As far as I know, that is all owned by Caltrans, but I will discuss that with them and see if that's something that the applicant would be able to update if it is Caltrans.
Yeah, because it shows it on the property line and it calls it a 4 foot high fence. And it would be great if we can get that cleaned up.
Sure.
That's my comments on site plan. Any other, Michael, do you have an additional comment on site?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you. So, I'm just looking again at the landscape plan, and thank you for pointing that out. I'm not sure how I missed that page. They are pretty small, so I'll give myself a little credit. But the tree, just to be clear, it's a Quercus ilex. It's a holly oak that is being proposed. It looks like there's 8 of them, 10 of them in the plan. And there are 2 that are adjacent to the right-of-way. One that's within 15 feet of Washingtonia along the streetscape there. The Mexican fan palms along the sidewalk there. I've seen them grow pretty large in this area. I have not seen a 70-plus footer, but the spread is pretty wide, and I'm a little concerned about the grouping along the biofiltration area. I think that there might be too many there. There's going to be some crowding happening, and there was certainly some intent here. The architect clearly knew, what they were doing. I'd like some clarification, maybe from Katie or maybe from the designer, as to why that variety was used there and within such close proximity to one another. The 2 that are adjacent to the sidewalk, I have a little bit of concern about, only because of the reach of that canopy. And the right-of-way, literally, public right-of-way starts right there at the edge of the canopy on these. And they're clearly not shown, they're not drawn at mature canopy size. But is there any response on that, Katie? Maybe from yourself?
Sure. I can't speak to why the Hollyoaks were chosen, and it was not one of the comments that was brought up by Pat Murphy when he reviewed the landscape plan. Certainly, we have property maintenance requirements that require the property owner to maintain a certain height, free and clear above the right-of-way with their trees. I will say that Pat Murphy did request that they modify the species against the freeway wall to something that's would provide coverage faster than the Hollyoaks. But perhaps the applicant can speak to the choice of the Hollyoaks for the rest of the site.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we don't have the landscape architect here in the call, so I can't comment directly on exactly why they chose that particular tree. Other than it worked with their design intent and their overall composition.
Well, yeah, I would just comment on that. The Quercus variety tends to complement this style of architecture pretty well in this region, especially. Coast live oak is not an uncommon companion. This one, a little smaller, still slow growing, does have a wider canopy, and so my suggestion to the committee here would be that we would consider, this, and that, especially up next to the right-of-way, might be the wrong selection or placement. I'm a fan of the oak, the Quercus variety. Again, with this architectural style, I think it can be nice, very nice. I just think the placement is inappropriate here with the 2 up against the right-of-way there, and then the 6 that are clustered together. We're showing maybe a, 10 to 15 foot canopy, 20-foot canopy here as these are drawn, but they could easily get 30, 40 feet in width or more, and you're going to have some clumping, which could result in some trimming, especially along the sidewalk area, that could start to look more topiary-ish. And I wouldn't want to get into approving projects like this where we know that branch pattern, that growth habit is going to extend into the right-of-way. It's happened over time, and in some streetscapes it looks very nice, but I think it's going to start to compete with our plant palette in the right-of-way, as well as obstruct pedestrian access or maybe even vehicular access at some point in time, and then would require pruning and just can be a mess. So I think we should consider that. And the other placement, the plant material, some of the smaller trees along the back, the acacia and the agonis, are going to add some screening to areas of the architecture where I believe there's some needs some attention on the north side and on the east side, where there seems to be some large areas of stucco wall that are exposed to those visible portions of the building would be screened now by the plant material that's shown in the landscape plan, but not necessarily shown in the rendering. So the colored renderings that we see don't seem to represent all of the plant material that's proposed in the landscape plan. So so I'd like to see there's some more window treatment. And again, deferring to the architects on the committee here, Zen or Bart, what are your thoughts on the north side of the building there that faces the off-ramp and the freeway? You see the elevation there where there's just a big area of just blank wall. There is some tree element, plant material element there that will probably grow maybe 20, 25 feet tall on a good day, which would cover a lot of it, but not all of it. And if there's ever failure with the plant material, then we're going to have that exposed portion of the building shown there. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think when we get to the building design itself here, we are going to require five-sided architecture, which means all four walls and the roof. We definitely need to pay attention. And once again, I'd like the architect to take a look at what was done on the Valero gas station, etc. Same situation of the off-ramp coming right by the building, and what they did to make it a more pleasant view. But it's certainly a concern.
Agreed.
Absolutely. We will definitely take a look at that.
The building elevation next to the off-ramp, that's probably the thing that will be seen every day by every driver going down. So, yeah, the window, I think, deserves a little better treatment. Commissioner Blackwell mentioned to increase the wall thickness, so there's a more recess of the window. I think that's a nice suggestion. There are a few trees on the landscape plan. It's not on the site plan. So if I base on the landscape plan, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trees along the off-ramp. Hopefully that will soften the architecture.
Yeah.
And I think on sheet A 3.3, the rendering, where we have 6, only 3 are showing along that that wall.
Yeah.
Okay, so for that's for landscape and site plan. Now let's really get into the building for a little bit. And I'm concerned about the adherence to the design guidelines that the city has us use as a tool to evaluate these projects. One, I would really appreciate on the renderings and the architectural elevations for you to put the finished grade and where it occurs on these elevations. That would be very, very, very helpful. But I'm struggling with the colonnade archways and your window placement. The examples that are good, there's one right across from Schwack's that has archways like this. They did a wonderful job of centering the windows on the archways, etc. And between the floor plan, the architectural elevations, and the renderings, each one of them has different window locations and different window types. They aren't consistent throughout the architectural package, and that's why I said, you know, did you have time to really plan check this and all? And I took a few minutes and tried to see if the windows for the little rooms could be centered in these archways, or could the archways be resized to accommodate the windows? And yes, they can, very easily. And that's on both sides, and I think that needs to be refine the architectural guidelines that we apply to this. Talks about the refinement of Spanish colonial revival and the sensitivity to scale and placement, and I don't think that's occurred yet on these elevations, and I think some attention needs to be put there. And Jen and Michael, do either of you have, I find the lower left corner of the building, which is facing El Camino Real, where these colonnades kind of come together, but they don't. We've got a glass railing that is mitered above it, and I'm not comfortable with the glass railing, but it doesn't seem to have been really resolved. I'm finding it very awkward, and I would suggest that that be refined and cleaned up a little bit, because the traffic pattern, you've got you walk along the front and you get down to the bottom. You really don't come out the archway along El Camino Real like the floor plan or the site plan shows. Of course, to the parking lot side to take the handicap ramp down to the sidewalk. Anybody else have a little discomfort with that corner?
Mike, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It'll be quick. Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do, and architecture, though the elements are there, architecture is supposed to make us feel good, and I definitely feel like there's something. I see all the elements, I see everything there, and it seems exciting. The modern lights and the way those colonnades aren't connecting. There's some plant material I think that's missing on the inner portion of that landscape area. I don't know what the lighting is going to look like at night. There are just a lot of things there, how that space is going to come alive at night, what parts are going to be visible, what the window recesses are going to look like, the window materials. All of those things give me discomfort. The lines, from that perspective, it just seems very, very busy to me, and the simplicity of Spanish colonial style, just especially from that perspective, isn't apparent to me. I'm just not feeling it. And I see the elements, and I think with some simplification, some cleaner tie-ins, I think we might have something there, but I'm with you, Bart. I'm just not feeling it.
I think it needs some refinement, and I would also like all the handicap rails to be shown on the renderings, because the last thing we want, and I think the last thing you would want, is for it to go to Planning Commission level and for someone to say these are too incomplete to make a decision on because the information is not shown. But I do want to stress, I really think those windows and archways need to be coordinated. I find that, windows hidden behind columns, it just doesn't show the sensitivity that Spanish colonial revival usually has. And the handrail, I know in your letter, or I think there was a response letter that came in from you guys that you were trying to take advantage of the view. Well, the view is going to be somewhat temporary until somebody builds across the street. But glass is not a traditional Spanish colonial revival material for railings, so it would either be stucco with some detail on it or wrought iron. I think those are probably your choices. Maybe some gable end details on the secondary tower that's the entry. The kind of thing, Jared, that I want to keep in mind. We don't have any sections through the building. And your stairways to your upstairs offices, when it arrives up to the top, you've got a pair of double doors and a wall that butts into the big arched window over the stairs. And that big arched window, not even into the middle of the arched window, so it can't be hidden. And I think things like that need to be resolved so we don't have questions of what's it going to look like. Also, Katie, on the list of gateways, also the North Beach Bicycle Shop and the whole North Beach soon to be historic district would be another thing that I could look at for
Okay.
the architecture.
Yes.
And then also the sensitivity window, it might be prudent in the presentations. You did a little bit, but we've got a whole bunch of different windows. Jared, what's your feeling of the reason you wanted to use opaque window panels and take your glass all the way down to the ground? Because all of these examination rooms are going to probably be curtained or blinded, so people aren't looking in along the deal. And then we've got these blank storefront panels, which are definitely not Spanish colonial revival. And why you, or was that just a quick decision and that's how you've done it in the past?
No, the idea was absolutely to keep all the storefronts similar on the first floor, all the way around the building. We struggled mightily with the idea of aligning the windows with the colonnade, but the idea that really wasn't the design intent, since as you turn the corner into the parking lot side, the window sizes change dramatically. You go from a single door to a triple wide. It ends up, there's nothing there there's no longer anything there to align to a colonnade. So that's why with the two colonnades, we had to make a decision at some point to see them as a separate design entity tying back into the actual project. Now, along the front facade, again, we struggled with that because we originally did have them aligned. And I tend to agree with you. We can realign those. The problem then is that because of the design of the colonnade, we can't get all the windows to align no matter what. So do you do 90% of the windows to align, or do you go ahead and do none of the windows to align?
Well, I worked on
That's
it.
really what.
Yeah, I worked on it a little bit and was able to do it. And what's really kind of made it a struggle, if you look at your site plan and floor plan, they show different kinds of doors and windows, 8101 and 10, and then your elevations show on A3 on both sides, particularly on the north elevation, show a different type of window than the site plan drawings show. And then your renderings show a whole third type of window. And I think it hasn't been resolved yet. And I was able to do it. I don't want to make it centered in the rooms. You've got rooms that are 10'4" or 10'6" or something, I think, along the front street, and 9' something or whatever in the back. But I think just by putting one small one to the front, and you can get all the arches and windows to align. So I will kind of show Katie what I'm thinking, or an easy way maybe to solve it. But I think that's something that needs to be resolved, is that doesn't meet the Henry Lenny guidelines for Spanish colonial revival right now. But there is a solution.
Understood.
But there is a solution. It doesn't require major changes or costly changes. It's just a little bit of reconfiguration. Jen, you have the floor now. I see your mute's off.
Thank you. Yeah, the arcade, or we can call it loggia, or that needs some refinements. I think it's not possible to align 100%, but do as much as you can. For the windows, Spanish architecture has narrow and small windows. So if you don't really need that size, then just reduce them. It depends on how much how big the window you need. But if you don't need that big, then make it smaller and narrow. So it has those vertical feeding of traditional Spanish windows. And if you have the inset, it will look better. Around the corner, having two stand-alone wall sometimes can be a little playful. Maybe the architect wants to play around it. But for the purpose of authenticity, I'd prefer it to to turn a corner so that arcade or loggia continue around the corner. It just looks better, in my viewpoint. I don't have any more questions.
Okay, very, very good. Michael.
Yes, the rafter tail, the exposed rafters there. So the spacing of those and the frequency. Built a couple houses over the years, and I know things things are different now. Back in mid 20s and into the 30s, when this was a common architectural style. Materials, we used real 4x4s and 6x6s and redwood, and materials were heavier, and engineering was different. And we try to emulate that now with design. But even this frequency, I think, does not support. I don't think that is just seems to be overkill on design. I don't know that even back then there would be that many beams holding up that floor with so close together. Can anybody just take a look at that and tell me, would you design anything like that? Would you use that many to hold anything up that size? So I don't know that translates. It's maybe it is a bit of whimsy, as Mr. Wu had mentioned, some playfulness in the design. I would maybe lean towards maybe being a little more architecturally correct. From an engineering perspective, I don't know that frequency would be necessary to hold up anything, to hold up that weight, that second floor. So what are your thoughts on that? Commissioner Crandall, what are your thoughts on that?
I would probably tend to agree with you. I would more put my comment to Corey, the owner, that anytime you get that many rafter tails, it becomes a maintenance issue. And if there could be half the number, it would be far easier to maintain and less costly. This is a personal opinion, has nothing to do with design review approval, but anytime you get a wall of that thickness with a stucco top that collects dirt during the year, and when we finally get a rain, washes all that dirt down the face of the colonnade, it becomes a maintenance issue also. So keep that in mind as you do the refinement to the project.
That's fair. Thank you.
The note says they're 6 by 12. They're overkill. Really need that size, and you don't need that many. I think you can reduce them, and it keeps it clean and simpler. The Spanish architecture usually they're not that busy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd say if we're going to go with this element, just make it consistent with what would be used in a real world application. So assuming those would be functioning support beams that are exposed, just use the number that you would use in the design, in a real design where you're going to be holding weight.
The Henry Lenny design guidelines have a minimum separation, so we'll take a look at that with the applicant.
Thank you very much, Katie. Any other comments? I think a lot will be understood, Jared and Corey, when you get an opportunity to review the other projects that are in gateways and what have been done. And when Katie gives you that list, I think you will probably see that our comments are intended to be consistent on your project the same way other projects have had Spanish colonial revival applied. And if you have any questions, we would be more than happy to answer them if you've got questions for us.
I have one more comment, by the way, for the parapet. I would rather see a stucco wall, and if you add a red tile coping on top, that will do. So
that would help, and it would certainly make maintenance easier. But Jared and Corey, do you have any questions of us, or I don't think it's ready to go to Planning Commission yet myself, and we'll let Michael and Commissioner Wu chime in, because I think we want to make sure for our benefit and yours that it is completely ready for the Planning Commission. I think with the historic district or the historic evaluation being looked at by a consultant, that'll be one thing out of your concern. You won't have to worry a bit about the use. We don't normally talk about here, but I think you're not going to have a problem with the Planning Commission on. I do think we need some sections and a roof plan, which is not included in our package. And then on the renderings, we see all handicap ramps and handrails that are coming out to the public right of way. And Katie, what was the final position the city was taking with the applicant on the sidewalk replacement?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
On the sidewalk repairs and replacement?
So that'll probably be the standard condition that engineering has, and because they're moving the driveways, they will have to meet the standard that engineering has, since the project is going to exceed $50,000. But I don't have the details on that.
Okay, I think we'll want to know that.
Okay.
For the next go round also.
Okay.
Yeah, that's quite important, because usually if your curb cut is not complying with the ADA requirement, then we want the sidewalk to be up and around the curb cut. That's going to encroach into your biofiltration area or landscaping area or both. But overall, I think it's a good design. It's definitely in the right direction. Just need some refinements and fine tuning.
Okay, would you agree with that, Michael?
Yes, I definitely do, and it is. It's nice to see a project this far along, but certainly agree with you guys that there's a little bit more to do here, and I'd like to see it back again at DRSC.
Okay, so Katie, I think that's the plan. If you have any questions, but I want to thank Corey and Jared for presenting the project. I think it's certainly a viable project and one we'd like to see built and have this business in that part of town. We're not looking at spending a lot of money, just refining it and just a little more sensitivity. And if Jared gets the time to do it, I'm sure he will pull it off. Corey, did you have a question? Or
No, I just wanted to say thank you. Appreciate the comments, and we look forward to coming back for you with those changes and getting that approval.
Thank you very much.
we look forward to that also.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Katie, are you clear on the direction? And I think it's important to get them every example so Jared's firm can compare and kind of give themselves a little history lesson on what the city has required in the past on these gateways.
Yes, I think I'm clear on the direction, and I will get them that list as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you again. Okay. Next item of business is item 2B, conditional use permit, CUP 2243 and minor cultural heritage permit, 2244 public house. And Stephanie Rojas is the planner on this one. And who do we have representing the applicant here?
We have the entire applicant team with us, so that includes, let me just grab the names. We have the tenants, which would be Eric Bowman and Boogie Rose. We also have the architect, Alura Aguilera with A2 Design, and the landscape architect, Scott Neiman with RRM Design. And the owner's representative, Jim Holloway, is very heavily involved in this project, but I'm not seeing his name under the list of participants.
And we are some of us are very familiar with Jim, so.
Jim is actually here with me as well.
Oh, great.
Okay, okay, very good. Hello, Jim. And Stephanie, you're up.
Okay, so I do have a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to just pause real quick to let IT get that loaded up. Perfect, thank you. So good afternoon or good evening, Chair Crandall and members of the Design Review Subcommittee. The item before you is for the Public House, which is a proposed event center and cafe. So next slide, please. The site is located in the North El Camino Real mixed-use zone within the architectural, central business, and coastal overlay districts. It includes 2 parcels totaling about 20,000 square feet. The site has 3 frontages on North El Camino Real, Calle de los Molinos, and Los Obreros Lane, which is an alley. Surrounding land uses include commercial properties on El Camino Real, including the Best Western Plus Hotel right across the street. There are also industrial uses in the Los Molinos area and residential neighborhoods across El Camino Real, which is approximately 200 feet away. Next slide, please. The property contains a 2-story commercial building, approximately 7,500 square feet in area. The main level and basement floor were previously occupied by San Clemente Art Supply and Framing, which operated at the location over the past 16 years. The building is currently occupied by an architectural office on the 2nd floor and a custom framing store within a 1-story outbuilding attached to the rear of the main building. The site is on the city's local register of historic properties, and according to the DPR form provided in attachment 2, the building was designed by Virgil Westbrook in 1926 and is believed to be San Clemente's first ceramic studio. This property is considered a unique example of the Spanish colonial revival style as represented in the city. And as you can see in this image, the most distinct feature of the building is a pair of large divided light windows set in an arched opening. Next slide, please. The proposed project would adapt the historical property into a multi-use building consisting of a daytime cafe, evening special events venue, and office. The project includes a conditional use permit request to establish the special events venue with a maximum of 150 seats. And in conjunction with the proposed event center, the applicant is requesting live entertainment, full alcohol service, and parking waivers. Exterior building and site modifications are also proposed under a minor cultural heritage permit. For the purposes of this DRC review, we will focus on the MCHP application rather than the CUP. Next slide, please. So there are two main components of the MCHP application. The first relates to the proposed outdoor courtyard. A stucco wall would be installed around the courtyard to provide privacy to special events guests, while also creating a noise buffer from surrounding land uses. Because the proposed courtyard would accommodate multiple uses, sliding pocket doors, as seen in the bottom elevation, are proposed. And those doors would remain open during cafe hours to create an inviting outdoor patio and encourage pedestrian activity. However, the doors would be closed during event center hours in the evenings. Next slide, please. Okay, so this landscape plan depicts the outdoor improvements proposed for the outdoor courtyard, which is really intended to convert the existing underutilized landscaped area into a more usable and functional enclosed courtyard. So overgrown vegetation would be removed and decorative hardscape, new landscaping, and other courtyard amenities would be installed to create a more welcoming outdoor atmosphere. Movable doors are also proposed at various building locations to connect the outdoor courtyard to the indoor spaces. And one thing I wanted to note that this current site plan has yet to be reviewed by our engineering staff. Our development management team required the applicant to restripe the parking lot, which resulted in the secondary driveway being closed off. And under this proposal, 10 parking waivers are tentatively being requested. However, once the site plan is reviewed by engineering, staff will be able to determine how many parking spaces short this proposal really is. So next slide, please. So these elevations depict the rear building. Existing single-story outbuilding is located at the rear of the property, and when compared to the primary two-story building, this outbuilding contains a very simple design with very minimal architectural features. So significant exterior improvements are proposed to this building to make it a more prominent architectural feature of the property. So these proposed exterior improvements significantly enhance the architectural quality of the one-story building while improving its integration into the primary building. The applicant proposes to replace the flat roof with a side gable roof with two-piece clay tiles, and the building height would also be extended to better complement the attached two-story building. Next slide, please. So here are the courtyard elevations. Essentially, this is what you would see if you are inside the property as a guest. Portions of the building will not be visible from street view due to the proposed courtyard walls and other features. Additional design features are proposed on the single-story building, including a clerestory window with wrought iron detailing, Spanish wood barn doors, wood trellis, and decorative doors with side lights. Next slide, please. So staff did reach out to the San Clemente Historical Society and the North Beach Community Association, and a public comment letter was received from the Historical Society. I can read that now or read that later. What would you like, Chair Crandall?
Let's go ahead and read it now.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is from Larry Culbertson, the president of the San Clemente Historical Society. He says, the public house proposal looks like it will be a great use of the property and a great addition to North Beach. A couple of thoughts. Figure 1, proposed stucco wall. We realize the need for privacy, but this wall is stark and unfriendly, as is the one to the left in front of the former frame shop. The wall approved for the Miramar project might be a good guide. Something like 36 inches of stucco wall with decorative wrought iron above. If my eye is to be pulled away from the historic resource, I would rather see beauty than ugly walls. And his second comment on figure 2, proposed facade. The historic building has arched openings. It might look better if the proposed new openings were rounded like the small historic entry. It is well that some of the non-original vinyl windows would be replaced by wood, but this is an excellent opportunity to replace them all. So that concludes his comment. And in terms of just concluding staff's presentation, I just wanted to summarize by saying that this project does represent an adaptive reuse of a historic building that fills a community need. The proposed MCHP application focuses on creating a functional outdoor space from an underutilized area, and exterior improvements are being proposed to create cohesion and consistency between the buildings while being sensitive to the historic integrity of the building. The staff report only recommends or only includes 2 recommendations. First, we are recommending signage to be incorporated into the application package. And second, we are recommending the applicant provide details on their outdoor lighting to ensure compatibility with dark skies policies. However, staff welcomes any feedback on these recommendations as well as the project overall. This concludes my presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we have the entire applicant team on the Zoom call today, and all of us would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Would Alora or Jim like to make a short presentation?
Sure, yes, and I'll be brief. Stephanie, thank you for that presentation. I'm Laura Aguilera, A2 Design. And first, regarding those walls, I want to mention, and we have Scott Nyman from RRM here as well, our landscape architect. Those are going to be heavily landscaped, so he has beautiful ideas to landscape those on both sides. One of our big ideas is creating a garden courtyard for this project. So landscape is a big deciding force on a lot of the gestures. And there is quite a bit of traffic noise. So that's the reason for the walls. In addition, we have a series of water features as well and these landscape elements. So we're trying to combat the noise, create this garden courtyard, and then have these openable rustic wood doors to kind of give flexibility to the space for an indoor-outdoor enclosure and an open type scenario. I think overall with the cafe, the idea, we're trying to create a little bit of hierarchy with a 1.5 story tall element there. Still being lower than the existing historic structure, but give it a little bit of volume so that it has some presence, and then tie in architecturally to the style to characterize, have similar characteristics to the historic structure. And we are reconfiguring the parking lot to make that ADA compliant as well. And regarding signage, we will the team is still working on branding, so that's something we could defer. We will ultimately have monument signage, but we're happy to discuss that as well. And overall, we want to create a space for the people in the community, and we want to bring rich vibrancy to the area. So that concludes my presentation, and then I can pass it to Jim here.
Hello all, thank you. Yeah, I would like to comment on a couple of the same things that Alora, but Alora's the architect and she looks from the inside out, and my background is public planning. I look from the outside in, which is what the planners typically do. About the wall, the staff has asked, and we are preparing an acoustic noise study. And one of the issues is that there are residents across the street within 200 feet of this project, unlike the Miramar, which Larry referenced. And another difference is the patio area at the Miramar will serve food, but they're not trying to do intimate ceremonies on their patio area. In this case, the public house, one of the uses will be very intimate wedding ceremonies and other ceremonies. So we're worried about noise coming into the patio, but we know about this section of El Camino Real, noise has been a concern to residents, so we don't want noise to leak out onto and disturb residents in the neighborhood. So I think the wall height is appropriate and serves 2 purposes: noise leakage to the surrounding residential areas, and provides privacy for this particular use, which is different than the uses that are proposed for the Miramar. Regarding the monument sign, and there's an additional staff comment about incorporating art into the building and the project that kind of celebrates the art heritage of this building. In both cases, we're fully on board with that. I'd like to explain a little bit about our team, though. The leasees are Boogie Rose and Eric. We have a team that has many passionate people involved. Eric Bowman and Boogie Rose are the leasees. They've got the original vision for the public house. We have branding advisors. We have operators of the special events. We have interior designers. And we'd like to get further along in the process, perhaps even into construction before we finalize art. But we have no problem with art that celebrates the heritage of this building. We expect the building and the patio to be art itself, but we want further art to celebrate the history and heritage of this building. But we'd like to see more, get a better feel for the art and the building when we're kind of in construction. And so if we could have a condition that had that art celebration finalized and approved by the city planner prior to issuance of the certificate of occupancy, that's what we would prefer. And of course, the city planner could also ask for the advice of the DRSC in determining the appropriate art at that time, once we can kind of walk through the spaces and really feel the spaces. And that would apply to both the monument sign. We're still working on branding. We have this huge, passionate team. Branding, as you know, sometimes takes a lot more time than some of the more substantial parts of the project, but it's important to the project. And then finally, I'd like to conclude about a comment about the landscape plan. We're on board again with and sympathetic and desirous of dark skies, but I'd like you to be careful on this project to not completely eliminate the concept of uplighting for landscaping. And I'm going to turn this over for a further discussion to Scott in a second. But uplighting on landscaping creates, it's a low level lighting. It creates shadow patterns with the branches, the leaves, the trees. It's not like downlighting in for instance, a supermarket parking lot, which actually emits a lot more light to the dark skies than well done, artistic, magical uplighting on landscape features within the patio. And with that, I'd like to give a short intro to Scott Neiman with RRM Landscape Design. He could further describe how the uplighting might work. We're not opposed to the dark sky thing. We just think we can actually do uplighting that's sensitive, consistent with dark skies, but also adds a magical touch. Go ahead, Scott.
Thanks very much, Jim. Yeah, I think Jim said it really well. We're doing fixtures that can point downward and limit any horizontal light escape wherever possible. So that would be the fixtures in the water features, downlights along the paths, and those are the kind of the two primary lights. But where we can really create a lot of impact with a minimal use of low voltage fixtures would be along the entry walls to uplight some of the plant material there, and then to cast a little bit of light and shadow along those walls, and then inside the courtyard underneath the olive trees. We think that that'll really create that magical quality and help activate the space and just kind of convey a sense of activity and excitement within that area while only using a few fixtures. So that's we have some examples of those fixtures in the landscape cut sheets for your review, but that's pretty much the extent of it.
Thank you, Scott. Any other people on the project team want to make a comment? Okay, we will open it for the committee members to ask questions of staff or the applicants. And once again, I will certainly open the meeting to discussion with the applicant's team during the discussion portion also. Jen or Mike, do either of you have a comment at this point?
Yes, I do. Page 3.3. That is west courtyard wall elevation. it shows that 3 sliding door panels away from the entry. But on other drawings, the sliding door panels are next to the entry. Can the designer clarify it?
These next to the entry?
Yeah, yeah, I think so too.
So, yeah, we're just trying to understand your question. Are you referring to the wall, the doors along the courtyard walls and the direction in which they slide? Is that correct?
I'm referring to the 3 door panels, sliding door panels, which is next to the corner.
Yes.
From the entry. Between the door panels and the entry, there is a blank wall.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically what we're trying to do is open up that corner. When you stand along the sidewalk, that's a very prominent corner, and it gives visibility to the existing structure and the proposed. So the idea is that there's that corner post, and then all of the doors slide into that wall, so it's a pocket door system. And on the other corner, they slide the other direction so that that complete corner can be in an open position.
One of the things that's not readily apparent, but if you're inside the patio with those doors open, there's a peekaboo view of the ocean. It's not super significant, but when those doors are open, that's when the cafe would be working. And you can see into the cafe patio area off El Camino Real, which we think is important to have visibility into that cafe use. And from the cafe, there's peekaboo views of the ocean. And that's why those doors are placed in that particular position.
Okay, thank you. Also, on El Camino Real, the wall is right on the property line. So when you say you're going to heavily landscape both sides, you were talking about a landscaping in the public right of way, and there's a narrow, looks like there's a narrow landscaping strip there. Is that right?
Pat, would you like to chime in on this?
Yeah, that's correct. And what we're trying to do there is use some narrow plants that have a lot of upright growth potential. So there's a few different kind of Mediterranean plants, like there's a kind of a bluish gray lamus grass, and then a few kind of upright succulents that work really well with the existing Mediterranean palette. They complement the palms, but they also have a lot of verticality. So we think that really the nice white wall with a little bit of texture and variation in color and foliage in front of that is going to be just a really nice kind of tableau across that space.
Stephanie, can you confirm that narrow strip of a public right-of-way can be used for landscaping, and our civil engineer has no other need for it?
You know, I cannot confirm that at this moment. I'm happy to make a note of it and look into it once we're ready to submit this back through the DRIVNG process. And I'll ask our engineering staff to pay particular attention to that request.
Thank you.
I can chime in as well. So that right now is an existing planter area, and you are correct, that is beyond the property line. So basically, we're going to replant within the line of the existing planter area. So if we do need an encroachment permit, we can process that with planning. But yeah, it is within the same landscape area that is currently shown.
Thank you.
Michael, do you have any comment at this moment?
Yeah, I've got comments. We get more into discussion, I think.
Okay.
I'll just save it till that time.
But I have more questions to staff.
Fine, go ahead before, and then I'll come in after you.
Stephanie, when you say that this comply with all the design guideline, I'm looking at the design guideline about the Spanish Colonial Revival District. It asks for low garden walls. And then when I go to zoning code, our typical wall height is 42 inches, as you know. And then it also says with the CUP, the wall height can be increased to up to 6 feet. The wall proposed is 7 feet. Is there any way in our code to allow for a 7-foot wall, even with exception?
Thank you, Commissioner Wu, for bringing that code section to my attention. I'll have to take a closer look at that to see if there is a specific exception that the applicant would need to apply for to permit this type of wall. But I would say that overall staff is supportive of the proposed walls as currently designed, including the materials and the height, because as both Jim and Allura mentioned, there is some unique circumstances related to the site, especially as it pertains to its close proximity to residences. Staff is very concerned about this being an event center and it creating extra noise that could possibly spill over into the residence. So overall, staff is supportive of the walls, in their current configuration, and we would look to see what exactly needs to be done within the code in order to get this, the walls approved. And as, Jim mentioned, along that point, staff is requesting the applicant to prepare a noise study, evaluating any noise generated by this proposed use and making sure that it does comply with the noise ordinance. So if the commission does have any desire to reduce the wall height, that is something that we would need the applicant to specifically discuss with their noise consultant to make sure that that is being reflected, because I do believe the study is being prepared according to the current wall configuration presented in the plans.
Thank you.
Yeah, historically speaking, I don't know if Jim was around during the event center in on South El Camino. We also had a wall along El Camino on the property line, and I believe there was a way or a process that they did get it above 6 feet. So take a look at the approval process of that one, and that should get us through evaluating the height of this wall also.
Mm-hmm. And Commissioner, I didn't catch the name of that project.
I don't remember the name of the event center, but it's on South El Camino down by the golf course.
Oh, okay. La Ventura, possibly?
It was Don Kapoff's project. I don't know the name.
That's the one, Jim.
Oh, La Venta or something. La Venta?
Yeah, La Ventura.
Yeah, La Ventura. And Don Kapoff was the owner, operator.
Yeah, so the same issue was addressed for that one. Allura, I just want to get your kind of a design approach. This particular building, for me, this is kind of considering the historic significance of it. Being a Westbrook design project, really, I don't find the El Camino elevation being the best or primary elevation on this. I really consider the, what would we call it, west elevation from the courtyard and that stairway and all being the best elevation on the building. And how did you approach protecting that stairway and that elevation so the public can enjoy it?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so we're really, for the most part, keeping that as is. We are adding along a portion of that elevation is where there are some aluminum and vinyl windows. So a little closer to the cafe section. And there's a flat roof there. So what we're doing is we're adding an overhang with clay tile roofing and putting in some wood doors. So we are enhancing that section. But the historic section to the right of that, we're keeping that as is and preserving that, because I agree with you. It's a beautiful elevation. The stair is staying exactly as is.
And the stair was my focal point, that I want to make sure those gates and the way the wall or the jamb of that gate goes in underneath the stairway doesn't confuse the view of that stairway. I find it probably the most intriguing part of the whole building.
Yes, and that is a tricky area. So what we did is we dropped that wall below that and we set it back as well. So we are preserving that kind of articulation that projects out from that existing structure. We're definitely going to work around that and preserve that. And
okay. Anything we can do to keep the view of it. I was even, if wrought iron would be appropriate, I'd leave it up to you to figure out how to do it. You've done a darn good job on it, but I just want to know that it can be justified because I'm sure others will be sensitive to that also.
yes, and we thought about wrought iron. Great idea and great point. But the only issue is the noise, and so we went back to the more solid door.
I wasn't thinking of the doors themselves. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but that is a great concept as well that we considered.
Okay. Any other questions of the project team or staff?
I do, Commissioner Crandall. I did have a question about the retention of the queen palms along El Camino and even on Calles de los Molinos. Was that a request by staff, or is that the applicant's intent to maintain the queen palms?
I'll defer the question to Scott Neiman, the landscape architect. It was not a staff request.
Okay.
I think that a lot of the queen palms have a lot of character that goes with so we don't see any reason to change them up, and they work really well with the composed scheme.
Okay, great. And then Stephanie, did we put a lot of any attention on the impacts of the alleyway and usage of the alleyway? There's been over the years some attempts at improvement in that alleyway. There's been some public art or attempts at public art, and some beautification, but not much. Have we put any focus or considered any further improvements on this property along the alleyway, or ways to increase vehicular flow and access? Right now, it's a little problematic to get in, and I'm assuming this will be a highly successful use, and we're going to have a lot of folks coming and going. When my kids took art classes there, and when the old business was open, we'd go a lot and rarely saw it at capacity. So, assuming that this project would max out, if you will, we're going to have some potential challenges with vehicular flows there. So, a couple questions there.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the presentation, the current site plan that you're reviewing right now was just submitted for DRC purposes, and it has yet to be routed to our development management team. So one main difference with this current site plan is that they are proposing to remove the secondary driveway off of the alley. So when it does get routed back to DMT and engineering in particular, they're definitely going to be taking a look and weighing in on that driveway closure. So I can't answer that just yet in terms of circulation, but if there are any specific things that you want engineering staff to take a look at, please let me know. I'm going to pass along any of your comments and thoughts. And as far as beautification of the alley, that's a great suggestion. I know in general that the alleyway elevation, it wasn't a big focus of staff's overall review of the project. We were looking at it more in terms of land use compatibility, such as noise and safety. So that might have been overlooked. So it's a great suggestion. I know that the applicant is proposing to remove some of those roll-up doors, so it's great that they're doing that to, eliminate that industrial type of look. But if the commission desires, there's certainly more opportunity to integrate more design focus to that alleyway.
Okay, thank you. And we have Stephanie, we have a street tree list. We've got trees that we like and trees that we don't like. And can you tell me if the date palms are on that list of trees that we don't like along El Camino Real?
Oh gosh, there are so many palm trees and it's hard to remember which ones are on the approved list versus not on the approved list. I'm wondering if Chair Crandall or Commissioner Wu know off the top of their head, but I will admit that the number of palm trees is a little intimidating to me, so I can't remember off the top of my head.
I would suspect Scott can probably address that.
That is something Scott has researched but does not know off the top of his head.
Okay, I haven't cluttered my brain with that one either.
I'm gonna right now though, so I'll see if I can find it.
Well, and the reason I'm asking, since we're talking about this now, right? We've got a prominent tree close to this property, and actually one is on the property, and one is adjacent to it. The canopy encroaches, and that's that date palm. And it's those significant palms. You may look at it and think it's a Canary Island or some other variety, but it's much more significant than the queen palms. And there is some continuity. It's not super consistent along El Camino Real in that on that part of the strip, but there is some there along where Schwack is and up the road a bit. So I was thinking it would be a nice alternative to have that continue, because we've got it's a beautiful tree, and it raises that canopy up where the queen palms they're a little bit weedy, if you will. They can get a little leggy, and conditions right now would demonstrate that. So those that have been out to the site recently can see that they're a little bit leggy. The palms across the street are queen palms, and they're a little older, I believe, and they seem to be a little more mature to maintain. So they can look good, but they do look a little leggy. And I think a great element here would be to continue that continuity. Maybe add two more along El Camino Real, and maybe one around the corner on Calle de los Molinos as a suggestion. They are very architectural, and if we're talking about the uplighting piece of it, the applicant had worked that into the presentation earlier. That could be a way to really add some more flavor at night, some more architectural value and flavor. Lighting is going to be a key component here at this property. You get beautiful architecture, and some of the existing proposed landscape is really going to really pop at night with the right lighting. So that would be something I would like to throw in as a consideration. I think it would go a long way. Overall design theme and just feel, especially at night. And yes.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Commissioner Blackwell,
yes.
Looking at the pre-approved tree list, queen palm is listed for general use, parking lot, and a view corridor.
Okay. So that's an approved tree, so it's acceptable to have it. Again, if there could be some introduction of that date palm, that variety that exists now, not necessarily that size. It'd be great if we could get that size worked in there somehow, but I think that would be really nice to see that continuity continue along the frontage there. And if I could ask about the lighting again, the applicant was concerned about the dark skies lighting. Are there some alternatives that could be brought back to us that could demonstrate that there would be no bleed onto other properties, and that there'd be some way to control the uplighting into the base of the canopy of some of these trees that are on site?
Yes, we can show some recommended fixtures, and then the general direction that they'll be pointing. The ones that we're mostly concerned with would be inside the courtyard. So just by virtue of them being on the ground pointed up, we're already not getting a lot of horizontal escape because it's being contained by the walls. So really what would be going up would be the light onto the canopy of the trees. That would be seen from the outside. It would be nice, like you mentioned, to introduce that outside as well. And so if we have those queen palms, we could establish a single low voltage light fixture at the base of each one, but that could kind of help set that rhythm for the planting on the outside, that then kind of enhances the architecture just the overall aesthetic at night. But we guess
Yeah.
how that would look.
Okay. Yeah, that could be tricky with the queen palm, especially those, the way these palms are spaced. It could get very busy. I mean, it's pretty busy looking, in my opinion, without any lighting. But again, it would be all about continuity and balance on the property. So having, 6 or 7 of them up front is great, but if you don't have, a balanced number along Calle de los Molinos or even on the other side of the drive apron, Camino Real to the east, and you start to lose that integrity there, in my opinion. You definitely want some balance, especially if you're introducing lighting. The larger palms would introduce an opportunity to do that and not be overdone. So, just again, a suggestion, something to think about. You might want to think about that. It could be something quite nice and make it a little more spectacular than it already is, because you've already got the elements that exist there. You simply play on that element that exists and introduce more of it. You can better define the property and the boundaries of it. It might be something to consider. Well, I asked Stephanie, thank you for the clarification on the alley improvements. I think that piece of it could change the character of the design to some degree. I wouldn't anticipate a significant change, but in terms of access improvements, parking alignments, configurations, etc., it could impact the landscape area as well. So something we should consider. Now, these plans are comprehensive. There's a lot of information, a lot of thought has gone into this, but I think that considering the volume that this use could bring, impacts to the area as far as parking goes and access could be an issue. So, and that could affect the design component, the aesthetics, and that's where at this level would be concerned. So if there's anything major that happens, after that discussion happens in other departments and design does end up changing, we might want to take a look at it again. If anything major happens, I don't anticipate that happening, but the way this is parked now, it seems to be underparked. The way it's, I'm looking at this, I'm thinking it's going to be a venue destination. You're going to have a lot of people potentially going to use this place. So where are they going to go? Where are they going to park? So just putting that out there, outside of the, parameters of our discussion right now, for the most part, but I wanted to just throw that out there because it could impact the overall design.
Thank you, Michael. I've got a question for the entire project team and even Stephanie to consider. On the alleyway, we've got the roll-up doors, which are actually kind of interesting openings. If when they were filled in, we left a reveal so that shape was still there, those could certainly become canvases for some of our local graphic artists to use for murals rather than the typical solution of just plopping something on a wall. It would give a framework area. It doesn't affect, it's not a highly visible elevation, but it might be an interesting way of creating some variation interest in the alleyway. So didn't know if any of the project team would think that would be an interesting concept or not, but it may be an approach. And seeing no comment, we will open it up for public comment. Close the question answer period, open for public comment. Any additional comments, Stephanie, that we haven't read?
There are no additional public comments.
Okay, we will open it up for discussion. Jen, I see you've taken your mute off.
Yeah, I actually have 2 minor questions. First, to Stephanie, this one-story outbuilding is still a part of the historic resource, is it?
That is correct. The DPR form doesn't really distinguish between the two different structures. The buildings are attached to one another, but it doesn't make any reference to the one-story outbuilding being non-original or being added later on. So staff would interpret that to mean that both buildings collectively represent the historic structure.
Thank you. Another question is for the applicant. How do you plan to provide access to the second story office?
Yeah, so the existing staircase will continue to function for the second story.
But they have to go through a door which will be closed after 3 o'clock.
They will have gate access. So it all will be utilized for the event center. So even the offices will all be under the same umbrella. So they'll be utilized within the operations.
So there will no longer be a office use on the second level.
It will be office use, but it will still be within the existing operations.
It'll be office use for the special activities, special events operators, and the office space for the cafe operators. It's all this operation requires office space, and they don't want to have a conflict with a separate office leasee or something like that. The operators of the overall complex intend to use the second story as their office space. And we'd be happy with a condition of approval stipulating to that.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael, do you have any discussion or concerns or?
Well, yeah. Generally, I'm very excited to see some activities. This is one of my personal favorite structures in the city and properties. I'm very happy to see the applicant taking such care in the details. I've always believed that the alleyway needed some work. Those elevations in the alleyway, some of the improvements that were made incorrectly over time, somehow snuck through. Those sliding doors, steel windows, and those elements there that just do not belong. I'd like to see some of that improved. Some of the access issues, parking that I touched on before, I think are going to warrant some real careful consideration and attention to proper design. The dump out is onto El Camino Real. There is motorists along that strip come down the hill and are going kind of fast, and so those are all things that I think are going to be important to consider. Overall, I like what I see here. I like that there's something coming that could be, bring it back to life and keep it alive long term. Some attention to the landscape area I think is warranted. There's an opportunity here to do something really nice. In my opinion, there was a lot of planting that was done in this landscape that has it's caused an almost a backyard feel rather than accenting a prominent architectural structure in town. And I think that the location, North Beach area, and everything that's happening in that area really warrants a lot of attention to detail and really sharpening the pencil on the landscape plan and doing something that's significant and even profound. I mean, some of the, again, the palm element to bring in some of those date palms, the larger trunk with proper lighting, I think would be quite nice. And attention in the alleyway along that elevation would be time well spent. But overall, I like it. We're starting with something we it's hard to argue because the significant portions of this building are remaining, and those architectural elements are definitely part of the origins of the city, architecturally speaking, and are being preserved and improved. And so I'm really happy to see that. Just would like to see some continuity throughout in the design, both architecturally and landscape architecturally, if you will, out in the garden area. So looking forward to seeing it continue, and that's about it at this point, Bart.
Okay, thank you very much.
And
who's speaking up there?
me, Jim Holloway.
Hello, Jim. You're up.
And just it is a little beyond the scope of DRSC, function. But I did want to respond. The staff has asked appropriately for us to prepare a public safety and operations report. And I know what's evolved over time, as code enforcement weighs in, the traffic guys weigh in, everybody kind of weighs in, and it gets to be a lot of operational issues. Well, I think what staff has now asked for is kind of a consolidated public safety and operations report. In that report, you will have a noise study that talks about noise leaking and noise attenuation or noise mitigation for the events on site. As Bart mentioned, there's a event center in South El Camino that we can look at as guidance. But so that's going to be in there. Interestingly, our first go around with DMT, the engineers ask us, there's currently 24 spaces marked off on site, but the engineers ask us to design the parking so that it met engineering standards, which meant that we lost 4 spaces. At the same token, we are advised by staff that the Planning Commission doesn't like handing out waivers needlessly. So we had, at first glance, kind of opposing policies. We have one policy from engineering say make it according to engineering standards, and the other one, the other policy said we don't want to give out any more waivers. Well, you'll have to wait till we submit our public safety and our operation report. But we think we have accomplished both things. We're going to not ask for any waivers, and we are going to comply with the engineering standards. It's magical, but it's all has to do with what uses are occurring at what points of time and what days of the week. And we've been doing traffic studies in the Los Molinos and El Camino Real area to further supplement our public safety and operation report. But and we are willing to stipulate to different. All these different uses don't occur and will not occur at the same time. They will be all offset, or practically all offset, from peak times that that each uses. The cafe will be morning and lunch. The special events will be after 2 p.m., etc. So we'll put that all together in a package. The traffic, if you add it all up and stacked it all up, might be a problem, but it won't be a problem because it's completely off-peak from the other traffic pattern uses within that industrial area and along El Camino Real. Needless to say, I didn't mean to go on this long, but we hear you. The staff has advised us of these issues, but we intend to address all those operational issues in this public safety and operation report, which is something the full Planning Commission will review and hopefully approve forthwith. Thank you.
And I just want to add quickly one more item regarding that alley elevation. Right now, the trash is just exposed with no trash enclosure in the existing structure. So we're going to be moving that. We're going to actually have a new trash enclosure that's consistent with the architecture of the building, clay tile roof, wood detailing and such. So that will also help with cleaning up the alley elevation.
We think the trash enclosure will be a piece of art in the alley.
Well, we like that. So if I may, Commissioner Crandall, I wanted to just comment on the applicant's statement just now, Mr. Holloway, and it's always nice to have somebody involved on a project that understands this town and what's taken place over many years here. And when we have an opportunity to correct things that that maybe weren't done properly, or maybe there could have been more that could have occurred to make it a little better. This is a great opportunity without putting any undue hardship on the applicant. Some minor changes and attentions in the right places can really make a big difference. And so things like the trash enclosure details, those are important. And for a use like this, where it's not going to be more commuter in character, you're going to have folks who are going to park and hang out a while. So, you're inviting people to come and spend time on this property, not, pick up a bag and take off. Folks are going to hang out. So anything that we can do up close, we do a sidewalk survey on a project, we see different things. We're on foot and we're walking around like I have many times here over the years. I notice a lot of things that could be done a little better. Simple cleanup things, removal, open up spaces. I mean, these are easy things to do, and that's what we're talking about here, is an opportunity to do those things, even down to the details on the doors of the trash enclosure, removing old windows and replacing with correct windows on a historic structure, even adjacent to. It's the overall feeling we're looking for, the experience along our streetscapes, not just driving by, but spending time on foot. So this is important, and I'm happy to see the level of detail here. I think this is it's a great use of energy and line work. And so if the applicant is listening to all of our concerns, in addition to what's already been provided here, working closely with staff, continuing that energy, I think we could really have a great project. So just wanted to extend my appreciation to that.
Thank you, Michael. In regards to the cultural use heritage permit, I'm in support of the approach they've taken, very much like the theater and the bowling alley. The less significant structure was the one that really got modified, not the primary structure. So I think the reuse of the building. I also think it is going to increase the public's experience of the building versus what it has been and what it's. I think a lot more people are going to be able to enjoy the project than used to be able to. So I'm in support of that. One item I was a little concerned about is the skylights in the event center roof. I didn't see a detail of exactly what they are, but I'd hate to see like a plastic skylight. I think it needs to be something that is historically correct for that building. Laura, do you have something in mind for those? Because you already have clear story glass in the high wall.
Yes, we will make sure that on the underside we'll have a nice wooden underside for those. And
I'm really concerned about actually the exterior.
The exterior.
Yeah.
Yes, so I will research that. I know that I will research that to try and find something that is consistent with the articulation.
Yeah, whether it's, it can be a flat, I mean, we're talking 1928. I mean, they had glass. They had ways to do it. I just want to make sure we don't throw in there a domed fiberglass skylight.
It'll absolutely be flat. And yes, I'll research the frame to find something that will tie into the architecture.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. And then for the, well, we're not really worried about the parking. That's at a different point, but I think they've been very sensitive. I think they picked a great architect for this project. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it, and not every special event is going to be 150 people. It might be interesting if when it goes to commission, Jim, if you can kind of query the other event centers and find out what the kind of common size is, because it'd be great to have a sellout every time. but I suppose there's going to be a lot of times when you have 100 people, 75 people, not 150. So it's not like this is going to be a sellout every night, like Hamilton. So I'm in support of it now. Is this ready, Jennifer? There's a lot that has to be done before it goes to the next step with engineering and so forth, with the parking agreements and all. Where does this go from here?
Yeah, so the next step is the applicant really wanted to receive DRSC input earlier on in the process. And so that's why they've held off on resubmitting their revised site plan to DMT staff. They wanted to make sure that they could make changes and incorporate any DRSC feedback today. So next step is they'll take all of your comments, make revisions to the overall application package, and then submit that back to the city so that we could take it through a formal second DMT review process. And we can certainly take a look and see, once we do that review, see if that does result in any substantive changes to either the site plan or the building that could affect what DRC reviewed today.
Okay, so it's not necessarily scheduled to come back to us. Is that correct?
It's really up to the commissioners today whether or not you want to strongly recommend it come back once these additional areas are refined and once DMT has a chance to review it, or if you want to leave it open to the applicant. That's something that we can figure out as we move forward and continue reviewing the project.
Okay, I do want to make sure. We are approving a site plan, but we don't know if the configuration of the parking and all is going to be this time. Number isn't the issue, it's just the circulation and the traffic study. So I'm curious about that, but I don't know if it needs to come back or not for that one item.
Yeah. May I?
Yes, Jim.
Based on those earlier DMT comments from engineering staff and also advice from the planning staff, especially regarding parking, we have modified, what you see, we think will technically satisfy the comments we got from DMT. But the main thing that we're waiting, one of the main things we're waiting on is the noise study. And then there's technical building code issues having to do with food preparation areas, etc.
There always is.
None of that has been the subject of DRSC, but I may not have said that quite right. The site plan you saw and the parking configuration is a modification based on DMT comments, and that is what we expect to submit back to DMT formally. And the other things that you didn't even see was the noise study, which is we think is a planning commission issue, and the building department issues on food prep and occupancy issues and that sort of thing. None of that we felt was particularly of concern to DRSC. We did hear the landscape comments clearly, but we think we are, based on what we've heard today, we think we're ready to move on to DMT, which we think we can satisfy. And then on to Planning Commission, we'd like to open at the same time as the Miramar and really give North Beach a big splash.
Well, with how fast they're going, I'm sure you can come real close to that. Okay, so Stephanie, if there are any big changes, I don't want to say at this point that it needs to come back. It's your discretion and city planner's discretion. If there are major changes, I think we want to see it come back. And I'm glad it's coming back to the Planning Commission, and I'm sure they'll understand that we want to keep the process moving. And with what we approved, there's some changes too that are minor, and we don't get into big design discussions, which Jim knows you don't want to do at the Planning Commission. I'm good with staying on. Michael?
Yes, I agree with you, Bart. I think this one has enough detail, information, cooperative applicant, invested staff. I think we're all kind of on the same page here. There's some things that, and I'm with you on any major changes. I'm still looking forward to seeing what happens with the the access component of it. I did not ask Stephanie about the utility poles and what is happening with SDG&E, and looks like another opportunity to partner and maybe get something put underground. We have some visual blight there. What are your thoughts on that? We've got two power poles that are along the rear area of the alleyway, the property there.
Yeah, so it didn't come up as a comment from engineering during the DMT review. So I'll have to circle back with Zach and discuss that point with him specifically on whether or not there's this project is significant enough where it would trigger undergrounding the utility pole. Because I have seen for other renovation projects that it's something that exceeds their threshold when it gets brought up during the DMT process. But if it wasn't brought up, I'm assuming that engineering didn't have any issues with the utility pole as they are right now.
Okay. Would it be possible to revisit that discussion? You said you implied that you were going to. So just to really dig into that and look at the opportunity that may exist there. I think that we've done this with other projects. This is a change of use, and I'm always assuming success. And based on the team that's involved here, the property itself, the location, I'm feeling like this is going to be a highly successful land use, and I think that again, investment is being made here. This is just one other thing that I don't want to look back and regret not really vigorously exploring. That there is some major visual blight there. I don't think anybody here would disagree with that. But I'd appreciate it if you could look into that and maybe provide that in the report when it goes to commission.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Hopefully we can. Because if we're going to apply that kind of discretion and concern to other projects, why not here of all places? Right now, with all the activity in North Beach, this is a great opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Okay, Mike, before you sign off here,
Chair.
could you give me your feeling on agreeing that the minor cultural heritage permit can be approved for this adaptive reuse?
What was the last part?
Just that the minor cultural heritage permit can be approved for this adaptive reuse.
Yes. Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Okay, very good. Jen?
Yeah, I have to differ. First of all, I think I'd like to commend Allura for having this wonderful design. There's lots of improvement to the outbuilding. Lots of details, almost to the point of deviate from typical simple Spanish colonial architecture toward the Moorish, but I'm not complaining about that. The concern I have are mostly what does it to do with the public. Those improvements are hidden behind tall walls. If public walk on the street, they want to see it. If they go to the other side of the El Camino Real, all they can see is a clear story and the raised roof, and the rest of it is invisible. So they're looking at the wall. That's typically, I've been traveling a lot. If you go to Asia, if you go to the Middle East, you walk on this wide street or narrow alley, there are tall walls, the blank walls, but behind those walls, there could be wonderful, beautiful, luxury gardens. They're private gardens to be enjoyed by the rich or the nobles. Different urban fabric, different cultural and historical context. But here in the United States, we want to enhance our public places, and the building needs to contribute to the public places. And the best elevation of this historical building is the west elevation, as Bart just mentioned, or from that corner. When you look at the outdoor staircase, the little balcony on the side, the small windows underneath the balcony, the arched window underneath the exterior staircase. That's the most, as you said, the most intriguing feature of this property, and it's going to be blocked quite a lot from a public view. I'm concerned about that. And I think we generally have some objective that a historic resource, any improvement, whether it's a neighboring property or its own improvement or alteration, should keep that important historic features and maintain the view by the public. And I think the wall diminishes that. So I think it goes a little too aggressive. If you push that garden wall all the way back to, just leave the front portion alone, let the west elevation still be visible by the public, then you will have a slam dunk without any problem. But right now, I think essentially we're talking about internalizing the building for private use. Yes, there will be sliding doors open for 6 hours in a day. So from time to time, people can see it, but for much of the afternoon into the night, people will walk past it along a solid wall. And the historic resource will be obscured from behind the wall. So for that reason, I do not support this. And I like to
clarify. We lost you there, Jim. Could you repeat that?
For the design as of now, I cannot support it.
Okay, so you cannot support the minor cultural heritage.
I'd like it to come back because the design, there are quite a few pending issues here. I want it to be prudent to see it again, and also the used view towards historic resource. I'd like it to see it.
Okay. Commissioner Crandall, if Commissioner Wu has concluded his statement, can I chime in on that?
Certainly.
Okay. So Commissioner Wu, I'm with you on that. I think the applicant has heard our concerns about obstruction, both with the hardscape and the softscape. That would include the wall. And if I did not clarify why I was concerned about the queen palms, that was the primary reason. Only because the queen palm grows it's a lower growing. It doesn't grow as tall as the date palm, and it creates some visual. There's some visual barrier that occurs there if you're driving, especially if you're driving up North El Camino Real to the south. There's some obstruction, and if those palms were not there, it would open up that visibility to the structure. And so little things like that can really open up the line of sight to those elements you're talking about, the stairwell and that primary portion of the building that is most interesting. It can be done with landscaping. I mean, you can do a lot with removal and addition of proper landscape material. So those two things together, I think, could address the issue. Would you be more comfortable with that, with the project, if those things were done to open up that line of sight? And would the applicant be willing to do that?
Well,
so what are your thoughts on that?
It's a 7 feet tall wall, and you don't see the bottom of it. You don't see the entirety of the west elevation.
So how about opening up that wall with ports?
Well, I'd like to see an open wall design.
Okay, I think we have a sound issue that we can't really address this sign, and there are certainly different opinions on how it can be done. I mean, in New Orleans, you've got these phenomenal gardens around, which have walls around them from the street. You can see the structures above. it's not necessarily San Clemente, but any other case where if they didn't do this, you could have historic structures where in the commercial district you've got a two-story building next to a historic building you can't see inside. So I certainly understand your concern, Jen, but we are going to get to see this once again at Planning Commission level, and we can give them these comments to consider it and how they want to present it, and it can be addressed there, I suppose, rather than holding them up for another design review meeting.
No, well, the applicant has 2 votes from you guys, so I'm not going to hold them.
Oh, no. I'm saying that I'm comfortable mainly because we have another opportunity to review it at the commission level. So they now have our comments, and I think Allura and Jim and the project team will consider what you said and put their best foot forward to address all of our comments. And okay, Michael, I see your mute going on and off.
I apologize. I'm sensitive to Commissioner Wu's concerns, and I'm also sensitive to the applicant's progression here. We definitely don't want to block the visibility, but we need to address some of the things in design. I think there's going to be a solution. If the applicant wants to maintain that enclosed space with a wall that high, there could be some concessions that could be made. I don't even know if that's the right word. Openings can be cut, elements can be added to open that up. So it's just not just a 7-foot tall plane of block. I mean, there can be things that can be done to soften that, to open up the line of sight. So, I mean, we can get into the nitty-gritty on that. I mean, I'm okay if the applicant is willing to address that, and our expectation would be that there'd be a solution that would go to the Planning Commission. But I want to extend caution, because if we end up having to deal with that at commission, then there's a discussion that could happen and further delay at that point. So it's going to have to, maybe the applicant want to take that opportunity to take another look at the design and come back to DRSC. But I'm fully.
We need to give them clear guidance, and we try to do that for applicants that have come this far. So
I agree.
Jen, what is your recommendation that they do?
Well, we heard you, and believe me, we've had many of the discussions you're having right now with this large, passionate design team that's working on the project. Definitely the landscaping issues, opening that up, that's easy to do. I think we need to better help you understand there's not only the 3 pocket doors on the west elevation, but there's a pocket door on the south elevation, or the El Camino. You open all those up, and there's a lot of visibility into the project site. This can't be all things to all people, though, and there are certain things like privacy for a wedding ceremony, given the noise of the El Camino Real. Part of the noise study will measure the ambient noise of El Camino Real, and if you need, I would encourage you to go out there and stand on the site and listen to the noise impact of El Camino Real on this site. It's not like it's a bar that's going to be operating. It's a private ceremony in the evening hours. But also look at that view with the concept of the 3 pocket doors on the west elevation and a 4th pocket door on the El Camino Real side. And I think that does provide a lot of visual connection to the public during the daylight hours. And people remember that. It's not like you'll not know it's there after, you'll know it's there after you drive El Camino Real 2 or 3 times. And then you can visit it, and then once you get into the patio, it'll be a nice, very nice environment.
And the only traffic that sees it is the southeast direction.
Right. But everybody that goes north has to go back south, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly.
But anyway, we would like to,
hides everything.
Yeah, and the doors are quite large. So on one side it's 18 feet, and on the other it's 12 feet. So when that corner is open, you can see the entire building. It's actually a great perspective view. And then looking the other way, you can actually see the Miramar. So they're both visible of each other from that corner. So that corner is a very prominent corner, which is why we opted to open it up in that way. I did hear you comment on some articulation on the wall, and we would be willing to look at that. So we can make considerations, as far as architectural articulation. Sure. And then, as I mentioned, the landscape's very important to us too, to really soften those as well. So we want something that's going to look great from the outside.
Do you have, Laura, do you have an elevation that would show what you would see from driving southbound with those gates open?
Yeah, in fact,
I think perspective is maybe not so much an elevation, but I think we need to prepare that for you.
That would be very helpful.
It would be really helpful to show, because it is, we have looked at it in model, and you do really see the building. It opens up quite a bit. So we could present that, we could use that to staff, and I think that would be really helpful to tell a story.
Jim, are you open to the idea that anytime you don't have an event, you keep the doors open? Apparently, I don't think you would have event every.
That's the intent, pretty much. Mm-hmm. That is the intent. The doors open are a great advertisement for the cafe, etc. So if you
absolutely,
even I would think that even some special events that don't have a very subdued exchange of bows were being open. But let's face it, San Clemente's becoming kind of the wedding capital of San Diego and Orange County. It's the economic driver of what makes this rehabilitation and reuse possible. And so we do need to be sensitive to the operators. But I'm with you. In fact, just a little internal discussion. I'm the one that was pushing for those doors, so I get it. But I also understand the needs of the wedding operators to have some intimacy during very intimate moments. Other mixers and stuff like that. I think we can keep it open. But I can cover a lot of that in this public safety and operations report that I'm tasked to produce.
Wonderful, Jim. Let me ask you, Laura. On your photos, you've got a photo 2 of the existing site?
Yes.
Okay. That's basically from the sidewalk facing south. Whereabouts would the doors be?
Correct. So basically, you can see the arrow for the drive approach, or into the parking lot, and then just behind that, there's some landscape. It will be where that landscape set in a little bit from that landscape. So there'll be landscape again, and then that wall will be.
So it's about where that sign is towards the left.
Yes, yes. So they'll even go on that elevation. It's 18 feet of length, so it's a pretty good distance. It's actually wider along that elevation, and that is a great photo to show how much is opened up from that perspective.
And now that you mention that, the current landscape being obscures that architectural. that character-defining architectural piece that we're talking about, the stairway.
Yes, it does, absolutely.
And I think the doors will reveal it. So we'll keep working on these issues.
Do you see that one, Jen? The photo two?
Yeah.
Yes. I think with the proper presentation, you can justify it probably.
Yes.
Our goal will be to make Commissioner Wu happy or at least moderately satisfied.
There you go. There you go.
Well, Jim, if you agree that you keep the doors open as much as possible, when you need a privacy, yeah, close it. Other than that, don't just close at 3 o'clock. If you don't have event there, leave them open.
I think we can agree to that. I think.
Okay, because that may very well be a condition of approval.
Yep.
Very good. Any other comments, Jen or Michael?
No, I'm good.
Okay, well,
No, thank you.
so very nice job, project team, and also Stephanie, excuse me. At this point, unless major changes occur, and we'd love to see those documents that show where the gate actually would be, and I don't know how we do that without scheduling a come back to design review, but if we could see them, we could raise a flag to you, and then request that staff send it back to us without requesting it here. Is that possible?
That's something we can certainly do informally through emails, and once that additional information is prepared, we're happy to send it over to you to be able to get your input for the public hearing.
Thank you, Stephanie. Michael and Jen, what do you think about that?
I think that's great. Fantastic. Let's keep this energy moving. I like what I hear. This is going to be a great project. Excited about it.
Well, I think, Jim, you assembled a great team and try to push the envelope. Good luck on that.
Very good. Okay. Do you have any final questions or comments, Laura or Jim?
Just that for the entire team, not just the two of us, but there's been a lot of people, very passionate people involved, and we sincerely appreciate your input, and it always makes it a better project. Even though we thought it was great to begin with, I think we can make some additional refinements so it'll make it even better.
And thank you, Boog, for investing in our city.
Thank you so much for giving us the chance to share our passion. And it's fun to sit with a bunch of people from San Clemente that get it, because everybody on the team's from San Clemente. So we're
great.
So encouraged by hearing this great input. Thank
you. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will move on, and I believe we're going to move all the way on to new business. And Jennifer, is she online here? There she is. Okay, Jennifer, this is Cultural Heritage Review Subcommittee, North Beach Historic District signs. Did we lose Jennifer Savage? There she is.
Good evening, subcommittee members. I do have a presentation for you tonight. If our staff can pull up the item 3A. Thank you. So I am here tonight to talk about the North Beach Historic District. And this is for the future historic district that we anticipate to be approved later this year, and specifically in regards to the draft signage. And, next slide, please. So this evening, I will go over a brief background, the purpose of this evening's subcommittee meeting review, and also the next steps. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background, the North Beach Historic District, as I mentioned, is in progress of being approved, and this effort was supported by grant funds from the state. And as part of that effort, the goal was really to create education, awareness, and heritage tourism around the North Beach Historic district area. As part of that goal, the consultants compiled and proposed a particular type of signage, and this signage would go on the contributing structures, the historic structures in the district. And I just want to make that distinction that it's not signage for the district as a whole, but rather the individual buildings identifying their significance. Next slide, please. So tonight we're here to actually get recommendations on the sign design and actually choose which sign design we are going to proceed with. Next slide, please. Option 1 is the sign design that the consultants put together, and this would be unique to each building. It would identify the building name and some detailed information. Before you on the slide here is for the beach club, and you'll notice that underneath the dates, it speaks to the detail of what the beach club is and or was, and specifically the architects and the builders. You will want to note with this particular sign design that it has a metal frame, and that's the metal frame that goes around the oval and the scroll, and it's full color printed laminate panel on the interior of that metal border. Sorry about that. And this option was designed to match the city's wayfinding sign program. Not only does it match the wayfinding sign program, but it would match any wayfinding signs that the city would decided to put up in the North Beach Historic District. So you would really have that continuity between the signs on the building and the signs that might be put, say, on the street, perhaps through poles to identify where to find these historic buildings. The other thing I want to point out about the wayfinding sign program is that it was approved by the City Council, and so there was quite a bit of effort to go through the design and the recommendations and the final adoption of the wayfinding sign program. And that wayfinding sign program actually identifies this particular design for historic buildings. Next slide, please. This option that you see here is an alternative, and it's based on the National Register Historic Places plaques. It does provide raised text as opposed to the flat panel that you saw in option 1, and it is a metal material for the entirety of the sign versus just the border and the scroll from option 1. I do want to note that this historic district is not required to provide signage that is largely seen on National Register historic places. Next slide, please. And this option 3, the final option, is very similar to option 2, where it is based on the National Register Historic Places plaques. It's not required to be used in the North Beach Historic District, but it does provide the raised text and is made of metal. Next slide, please. And so you have 3 options before you. Just to reiterate again, the approved signage through the wayfinding signage program is the first option. It is distinctive from the National Register, which is great. It provides that unique design for the city of San Clemente. It may draw more attention from a pedestrian scale because it has that unique design. There is some degree of articulation based on the fact that you do have that metal border. Options 2 and 3 might be more classic in their look, but they would require a change to the wayfinding sign program, which could take a considerable amount of effort. After this evening, we would take your recommendations and back to the consultant who would compile the final sign package. We would come back to you with that final sign package, and then the city would work towards funding opportunities should the historic district be actually adopted and approved later this year. Next slide, please. And staff is available for any questions.
One quick question, just so I understand. Why would the wayfinding sign program have to change depending on which sign we specifically pick for the historic place signs within the district?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the wayfinding sign program went through different committees and public hearing processes and was finally adopted by the city. And it depicts and designates and delineates what signage is to be used in the city of San Clemente for historic resources and historic structures. So if you wanted to do,
and that is item 1, option 1.
Correct. And I do have slides for all of the 5 buildings that these would be placed on, if you wanted to go through those. But it should be noted that if you wanted to deviate from that particular design, then we would have to go through that effort of modifying the sign program.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Or Jennifer. Okay, any questions from Jen or Michael?
Yes, Jennifer. Does any individual building already have those plaques?
Do you mean in the district or in the city of San Clemente?
For example, Old Hanson Beach Club. That's on National Register of Historic Places, is it?
It is.
Does it already have a plaque?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I apologize, but we can find that out.
Okay. And casino, I assume casino would be a similar thing. Maybe they already have something.
And so would Casa Romantica.
And so this signage that you are reviewing tonight would be a complement to that, in that the signage specifically identifies the building as part of the North Beach Historic District. So any existing signage on those buildings would not have to be removed, but rather this signage before you this evening would complement that and then highlight the inclusion in the North Beach Historic District.
This signage will be attached to the building permanently, right?
Correct.
So my point is, if Old Hanson Beach Club or casino already has one on the wall, we may not want to duplicate it.
Yes, that I do understand that concern. One thing to note is that this signage would specifically identify those buildings as part of the North Beach Historic District. What you could recommend is that if a building in the North Beach Historic District does have existing signs, that particular building doesn't receive this signage, or you can recommend that it does receive it and complements the existing signage, or you could recommend no signage on the buildings at all.
Okay, and do we have a map to show the location of those signage? Because I imagine that we may have a monumentation for the whole district, or we'll put the signage on an electrical pole or something. Then on each individual building, we have a plaque. So there could be 2 types of signage. One is option 1, that's for marketing purpose and for wayfinding. Say this is North Beach Historic District. Then once people goes to an individual building, they see a brass plaque affixed to the wall. Is that possible, or do we have to use the same type?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's 2 things in relation to that question of having not only wayfinding signage in general for the district and then the individual buildings, and then the second question being whether they have to match. So the first question is, for this effort this evening, it is just plaques on the building. Any additional signage for wayfinding signage or district identification signage would be a future endeavor. So again, this evening is just the plaques for the buildings. The second question about whether or not they have to match goes back to the wayfinding sign program, whereby right now there are requirements for sign design through that wayfinding sign program, and if you wanted to deviate from that, we would have to modify that program.
Okay, thank you. So just to say my opinion on that, I like option 2. It looks better, and it also gives us some space for description. Option 3 is good too, but there's no space for description. If we use option 3, we may want to add some description in a different format. I think option 2 just covers them all. So that's my comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, I'll jump in next. I remember going through the wayfinding signage and process, and I didn't realize that that was mandating what kind of sign was used to identify the building itself. It was just to get your way through town and find the buildings. That's why I asked my question, why wayfinding sign? And apparently I'm wrong, because as far as being impressed and really feeling the importance of the historic building, I have to concur with Jen that the number 2 option for me is more impact and makes me more impressed by what it's talking about than the less formal wayfinding sign. And I would say, oh, gee, this is really an important place, looking at 2, where I go, oh, the city says this is an important place, looking at number 1. And it feels more national versus local. And within the National Historic District, I think that's good. Through our town, when it's just a Ollie Hansen that may not be on the National Registry or anything, and somebody wants to say it was built in 1928, I think the other one's fine. But I actually lean for option 2 is just by gut feel that it makes me more impressed by what it's on. Okay, Michael, jump in.
Yeah, I agree. Option 2, that is what I would envision as more consistent with the structure itself. It's something that I've seen in the past with other historic structures. It's kind of a badge of honor that's earned, and if to Commissioner Crandall's point, if it has not earned that at some point in time, then something other than that is okay. It's definitely an improvement, and it identifies this important property. And if at some point that structure becomes present on the registry, then it earns that badge of honor, if you will. So I think a two-way approach to this could be good. I like the wayfinding. Definitely, that first option has some great detail on it that's consistent with our discussions from the past, and it creates a sense of place for the district. But in terms of identifying each property, yeah, I mean, we should be consistent across the board on these. And that third option, I've seen that before. It definitely looks less formal. It's almost as if somebody went online and ordered it. Option 2 is definitely something that's more official. And I think, these structures have earned it, and they should have something, this permanent badge of honor that will stand the test of time and have that quality look about it. And so that's my thought. Yeah.
And that is 3 out of 60,000 people's opinions.
Yeah. True.
Thank you. And then I did want to note that we did receive one public comment, and if you would just let me know if you'd like that to be read into the record.
I would definitely like. Is that from Larry?
It is.
Okay. Please read it.
Thank you. Jennifer and DRSC, it would be good to know the cost of each of the options and where the plaques will be located. The metal options would be far more expensive but would last longer. The metal would be a target for theft and would need to be securely mounted. Plaque technology has improved to where they do not oxidize to unreadability as they used to. Option 2, metal material with raised text, is far more dignified and fitting for such important resources. Providing information about the contributing property is much more desirable than just naming it. The city should instigate individual national register listing for each of the contributing properties. Then each could have a plaque for that designation. Thank you, Larry Culbertson, San Clemente Historical Society.
Thank you very much. So where does it go from here?
Thank you. So next steps is we would take your recommendations, work with the consultant to compile a final sign program, and then come back to DRC to show you that final sign program.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the final say on this is obviously, I assume, City Council, correct?
No, this would be an effort at our level, except for the fact that right now the recommendation is option 2, so I stand corrected. So we would have to go all the way to the council level to request an exception or modification to the wayfinding sign program.
And I think both Jen and Michael were very eloquent in saying it. I do believe that it's a badge of honor rather than just a sign. So I think that needs to be kind of our take on the issue. So very good, and I appreciate your presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Let's go back to the agenda and see where we are. So that was new business. We have no old business. Any oral and written communications? Stephanie?
No, staff has not received any additional public comments.
Thank you very much. And do we have a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion that the next regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee will be held on Wednesday, October 14, 2020 at 4 p.m. Conference at the September 23rd, 2020.
I can second that.
Let's do each. Jen, vote.
Aye.
Michael?
Yes.
And Mr. Crandall votes aye, so passes 3-0. Very good meeting, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Crandall. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, good.